Well, welcome everybody to the October edition of our online videos for the alumni of the Sunshine Coast Health Center up here in beautiful Powell River, BC. And this month, we're going to talk about this concept called purpose in life. Now, you all know that I'm a big fan of this psychiatrist by the name of Viktor Frankl. He was the fellow who was in Auschwitz concentration camp, and based on his experiences developed this idea of what human nature is like and its strengths and how it could overcome adversity. And his big thing that he said, and what he's famous for, is he said the essential motivating feature of life, what really gets people going, is what he called the will to meaning. And basically what that means in layperson's term is that each one of us is desperate to go live a life that we believe is what we want. So this is a personally meaningful life. Anyway, Frankl, he was a bit of a philosopher. Yeah, he was a psychiatrist, that's true, and he was MD and all that. But really his works are as a philosopher. But a lot of psychologists got really inspired by his work and started putting sort of a psychological basis to what he said. At any rate, he kept talking about not only meaning in life, he kept talking about this concept of meaning and purpose. And in this month's online program, we'll talk about the purpose part. I mean, we talk a lot about the meaning part, but not a lot about the purpose part. And yet the purpose part is pretty fundamental to his thinking and his theories. And in fact, in psychology now, it's actually pretty big stuff. In fact, it's used in addiction research all the time. I've got here, here's a typical example, okay? This is a very famous psychological test called the Purpose in Life test, or the P.I.L.T. This is the original test. It was developed mainly by a guy by the name of James Crumbaugh, psychologist, but it was based directly on the ideas of Viktor Frankl. And the Purpose in Life test it's been modified a bit. I was at a conference and this fellow from the University of Mississippi was doing a lot of work on this. But it's a test we've been using for decades with people suffering from addictions. And in fact, that was the original purpose of it. Now I'll just read you some of the questions on this purpose in life stuff. So he's got one. In achieving life goals I have, and then you get a choice, 1 to 7, okay? 1 is made no progress whatsoever. 7 is progress to complete fulfillment. So you get the idea, right? So either end of the scale here. Or another question, I have discovered, on one end of the scale, no mission or purpose in life. At the other end of the scale, it says clear-cut goals and a satisfying life purpose. So you get the idea. So we give this test to people and they fill out the little blanks and we come up with a score, and then we can determine whether or not how good their purpose in life is. But purpose is a little different because the key to it is this: it's basically an action that you take, so something that you do. Okay, so that's what purpose is all about, and that's what distinguishes it from meaning, which is this, according to Frankl, this basic, essential motivation of all humans is to find a personally meaningful life. Versus purpose is much more of the action. What do you have to do in order to feel whole and fulfilled? Okay, so anyway, we'll spend the month of October on our online program taking a look at some basic principles. Not that they're going to give you the answer, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, this is, it's going to take a lot more work. But I'll give you some basic principles that you can operate with. And the first thing you got to figure out, first principle, is that purpose in life is a very personal thing. Okay, no one else can tell you what your purpose in life is. There's no point coming to a counselor and saying, Jeff, can you please tell me what the hell I'm doing on the planet? That kind of thing, because I can't give you the answer. I know it for me personally, but I don't know it for you. That's your job to figure that out. Okay? But this is really fundamental, because if you remember back to your time as a client at the Sunshine Coast Health Center, just try to recall some of the life stories that you heard, right? How many of the fellows here were living their lives really not for themselves, but because basically somebody told them to do it? Typical examples, at least for men, are work. I just think back to the fellows who are here, and if you remember back, like, what kinds of jobs did they do? Did they find a job because it was their lifelong dream job, which they had been, I figured it out when I was a teenager, and I want to be a medical doctor, so I went through school and very methodically achieved this dream job? Or did they work at a job because, well, mom and dad own the company and I get a nice car out of it and I actually get paid more than anywhere else and that's why I'm at the job? Or did they get a job because it allowed them to use drugs? There was enough freedom and everything else that they could use drugs. Or did they get a job because, well, it just fell into their lap, right? They're just walking around and ran into somebody, they offered them a job, great, and they took it. In other words, none of these jobs that I've described had very much personal meaning. Like, they would go to the job and do it for a paycheck or because mom and dad wanted them to, or there's not much personal stuff going there. And purpose in life is fundamentally unique to you as an individual. So that's the first principle you really got to wrap your head around. No one can tell you what your purpose in life is except you. And this is why, for example, when you were in treatment here, we spent a lot of time trying to help you come to terms with what do you truly want? Like, what makes you truly happy? Not what you're afraid of and not what you don't want, but what do you do want for real in your life? Because you have to have some of this self-awareness in order to figure out what your purpose is going to be. But as long as we find people, and this, as you know, this happens all the time, right? A 45-year-old man, married, 3 kids, owns his own business, and he's still living the life that he thinks his father wants him to live, right? Still trying to live up to some standard he thinks his father's got of him. That is not a good recipe for finding your purpose in life. Your purpose in life is not to live up to anyone's standards, okay? That's just not going to work. Your purpose in life is not to do something because, well, I really am kind of confused, and, well, Tom, Dick, and Harry think I should do it. It'd be a good idea, so I'll do it because they think it. No, that's not really a good plan. You got to do it because it comes from inside of you. It's this very personal thing. At any rate, that's the first principle. And next week, we'll give you another one. So, see you then.